Hey there everybody, and welcome back to the next video in the updated how to create a social or sharing app playlist. In today's video, we're going to be walking through the creation of this navigation bar here. You'll see this is what it looks like when you're in a web view, and if we use the built-in tools in Google Chrome, you can see a web view or the mobile view would look something like this. So the idea is basically we have a menu where when you click different tabs, it looks like that tab has been activated, for a lack of better words. So we're going to walk through not only creating this, but creating the logic for accessing the My Account page. So before we get started, don't forget to like and subscribe and check out the channel for new content. All right, so what we're going to walk through first. All of this is set in one container, so it's very easy to copy and paste into new pages. One thing I want to add as a point of just a note is when you're doing this, I would recommend, if possible, avoiding adding this until the last step, just because if you decide when you're going through building out your app that you want this button to mean something else or to do something else, once the app is complete, you're going to have to go and make that change on every single page of the application. So just wanted to make that as a note. I just thought that that would be kind of a helpful thing to kind of help you all. So let's go ahead and walk through what this actually is. So in order to create this, what we're going to do is we're going to start off with a container. I think that these are a highly useful and honestly underutilized area of AppGyver. But this container means everything that we put within it is basically grouped together. So you'll see we have container 8 right here that's been selected because we dropped it over. Now we're going to look at the way that this is laid out. So you'll see we have 5 cells inside a row. And if this doesn't look familiar to you, don't worry about it. It's very easy to make. So the next step is we're going to find the row component. We'll drag it into our container. Now by default, when you click on one of the cells, if you go over to layout, you should see this right here. You have 2 cells. Now you can increase the number. In our case, we need 5. And then wait a second for everything to kind of update. And now we have these 5 cells. Now, once we have these 5 cells, you'll see inside each of the 5 cells is a component, except in one of them, there's a drop down, which in this case, we aren't really going to need. That's kind of like from an older application, so we don't really need to worry about that, nor will that actually come up unless you need it. So again, in each cell, we just need an icon of some kind. So on the left-hand side over here, you'll see we have all of these options, but you may not see icons by default. If you click and expand primitives, you'll typically see a couple of additional items here. However, if you don't have it pre-installed, then you can go to your installed section and you can scroll through. If you haven't already, then you can install it from the marketplace. Now, this is a really good segue to go into the updates. Since the last video, there have been some updates, so I'm just going to click install here to make sure that we have the most updated information and updated components, and I'm going to save those changes. This is really, really helpful to make sure that your app is updated regularly and basically compliant and using the most up-to-date code for all of the different components. So if you need to, you can go to the marketplace, and here you can type in icon, and you can grab this, which I already have installed. So now we're going to drop it over here. Now, one thing we can use is you can hit Control-C and Control-V, or the equivalent for Macs, to copy and paste, and then put it in a new cell. So when I select the item, Control-C, Control-V, you'll see it's pasted, and then I can just move it into the next cell. So we have this set up. So now we have our 5 items side by side by side. So now we're going to go to our container and make sure that our formatting matches what it should. So in our case, the background color is a color that I made. So we'll go to this new container and we will make that change as well. So we'll go to the layout and then you can go through, make any changes that you need to as far as, customizations, styles, etc. But for this, we are going to be using the default container, and you can just click Edit. In here, you'll see padding, which is the space in different areas of the container, and background color. So in this case, you can select colors here, but if you want to add one, you can just select that option there, and we'll name the new color whatever you want to call it. And we'll have, let's just say, some kind of like a darker blue. So once you've selected it, you can click Save, and you should see it set up by default, and now the color has changed. Now you'll notice that the one up top still looks a little different. We do have a couple of formatting changes that we also need to make. So padding is correct, image resize is correct, shadow. So we are on the actual entire container, so we see that there is a medium shadow that we need to add. There's no borders or anything like that. And then under advanced, there's really no additional settings there. So let's go through on this side, make sure. So we have our advanced set up here that we also need to update. Now, there are a couple of changes that you're going to need to make that are going to be somewhat, imperative for your pieces. So the biggest thing is we're going to set the width to 100%, and then the height, I just set mine to a preset value of 28. So we'll go down and we'll do this first. So it is going to be right here. We will choose width and height. We'll go to advanced. Width, we'll go to percent, and we'll do 100. And you can just hit enter. And then for height, we'll do the XXXL, which is 28 pixels, and we'll hit enter. So that's set up the container to be similar size. Now, the next thing that you would want to do, we'll double check and make sure that there's no other changes that we need to make as far as transformations or really any other big changes. So effects, again, in this case, we don't need to add in shadows or any kind of special padding. So at this point, no borders, but if you want, you can adjust any of these to match, whatever your specific needs are. But at this point, the top gap and bottom gap, this is something to be cognizant of if you don't have the padding set on your page correctly. So what I mean by that is you'll see that we have everything kind of matching here, but when we go to our page, we'll see that this is actually touching the top border for the website. So what I've done is when you go to page layout, if you go to style and you go to padding, you'll see that I have 0 set right here, which means there is 0 pixels of space between the top of this container and basically the window itself. It's the same on the left and the right. If we were to adjust this, it's going to add small gaps of space. So in this case, if let's just say we made this 20 pixels and we hit enter, you'll see there's now a gap here. So what I did was I reduced the gap to 0. That way, this looks like it's the very top of the entire page, and it doesn't look like it's detached in any way. So we've finished the formatting for the container. Now we need to double check the formatting for each of the rows, or for the row itself. So the row, if I'm not mistaken, doesn't really have any special changes. There's no transformation or advanced, really anything. The align cell content is set to the far left option here. Nothing special with position or really anything else. So the rows are okay. Now we just need to check cell contents and layout. So all the components are aligned using the far left option. The biggest thing to factor in on each of these cells is the shadow effect. So the shadow effect, you'll notice on the first cell, which is cell 1, is set to false. But if we go to, for example, cell 4, and we were to do the same thing, so you can kind of look through all of the different settings. So we'll go back to style. So the shadow here is true, and we have a medium shadow, and the border is set a little bit differently. So I'm going to explain what this means. The shadow effect is what shows or makes it look like this page is kind of overlapping. You'll see this little shadow right here. So the shadow is always going to be different only on the page that's actually opened. There's no shadow on these 4 options because none of them are open at the moment. So what we need is borders between all of the pages that actually are closed, so to speak, and then we will need to have the shadow effect on this particular page here. So what we're going to do is in every cell that is not currently open, so in this case we're going to go start at cell 1, we are going to set enable shadow to false, and then for the border we're going to choose, in this case we are going to choose border solid, and then border width, you'll see we have the option to do individual borders. So we have top width set to 0 because we don't want a border up top. And then we want right width, bottom width, and left width to all be 1. So what this is doing is it's saying we're going to have a border here, here, and here. And then the shadow is going to be on, so it looks like it kind of overlaps here. And then you can click save. And then if you need to test anything, basically you would just try to find this page within your app. So in this case, I'm going to the boards page, which would be right here. And then you can just check and see, okay, the home page looks good. So the next thing that we're going to do is basically you would repeat that process for whatever other pages. So we'll try to mimic this option up here. So what we're going to do is we're going to scroll down, and in each of our cells, so we'll go to cell 1, and we will go to layout or style, and you can choose edit, and then here's where you're going to have effects and border. So we don't need an effect on this one, but the border style we do need. So we'll choose solid, and then individual width. So top we have 0, but as we remember, we're going to do 1, 1, 1. And then we're going to repeat the process for the remaining cells. It'll look a little odd at first, but once you kind of finish everything, it'll start to kind of fall into place. So border style, we'll choose solid. You'll click individual borders, and again, going through 1, 1, 1. And then you just continue to repeat the process. And again, once you create this the first time, you can just copy the entire component. So that container, which makes it a little bit easier. All right. So now we're going to do the same for cell 4. And we will choose effects and make sure. So this is the cell, if you remember, where we do need the shadow. So we're going to choose, we'll just go with a medium shadow for now. And then we will set the border, individual borders, to 1, 1, 1. Now it looks like I maybe it's just on a little bit of a delay. So we'll continue on. And again, the idea here is every page is going to have a border, or should. We'll double check and see what it looks like. But at this point, we'll navigate to this page and see if it kind of matches our current border. So once the app uploads or updates, we'll click the page and look down here. So it looks like it stopped updating on the last 3. So we'll need to go redo those. I'm not quite sure why it did that. So we will go redo those borders. Border style. I didn't set it to solid. So that's a good thing to note that you need to do. So we'll make sure that we have border style set to solid. You can use any other type you want. I've tried it with a couple other styles, or at least with the dotted or dashed. It just, to me, doesn't look as good. I don't really think those are really what it's designed for, just to be honest. So we'll make sure that all of these are set correctly. And then we'll click Save. And then we'll go back to this page and see if it looks a little bit cleaner. Now, another thing to note is you may be wondering why I have this little bit of a gap down here. I personally like it. I think that when you have this pixel or two set up right here, it helps to show that this page is essentially the one that's open. So you can change that gap if you need to. But you'll see we're starting to look a little bit more like we should. So now we're going to select this cell and just double check that Enable Shadow is set to true. And now you'll see what it looks like. So pay attention to this one right here. When the page refreshes, we'll show you what that shadow will actually look like. So now you'll see that this one is starting to pop a little bit. It looks like this one is open. Now this is not working as well with our colors, and we also need to make sure our icons are centered. But as you can see, this is starting to look a lot more like our navigation menu up here. So now what we're going to do is we're going to look at our container up top, and we're going to look at our cell 1, and we're going to see what options can we have as far as layout and components are concerned. So for the icon itself, we have the icon aligned in the middle. And then we don't really have anything special going on outside of that. So let's try that option here. So we'll click center, and we'll literally basically just replicate this across each. And this is probably the quickest one you'll do. Now you may be wondering how you change the icon. So if you want to change any of these, you can select the icon, and up here you can choose the icon and you can tie it to different properties. I've just been using the Font Awesome icons that are included. It's a pretty large list, so you can just choose whatever icon you want to use. And in this case, I'll keep them all to be the same. And if you want to select an icon to open a page, we'll cover that in just a moment. Now, the only other thing to note here is when we're looking at the cells, again, just making sure that we don't have anything specific going on with styling. So for example, we want to make sure that there are no special effects or shapes, transformations, advanced settings, but there shouldn't be anything unique like that. So in this case, we should be looking very, very similar to what we have going on up top, essentially. So in this case, we will refresh the page, and now we will see, outside of the colors and the few extra pixels right here, we basically look like we do up top. So these two kind of match. So now at this point, we should be able to essentially start kind of finalizing things a bit. So we will go down to our container 8 here, and we will double check padding, and then we will check, for example, if we want this cell, we can check the padding here, and we have a couple of options. So when we're doing this, if you're interested, you can edit your icon settings in here, including colors and all of those additional advanced properties. But what we're going to do at this point is we're going to look into seeing basically how we can set up these icons to navigate to different pages. So we'll go through that logic now. In this case, I'm not tying it to the icon, I'm tying it to the actual cell. The reason for that is if someone clicks anywhere in here, I want them to go to that page. Just clicking on the icon it's so small that people may wonder, why can't I click over here? So I'm selecting the entire cell, and then I'm just bringing over the open page logic, and then over here, selecting the page. You'll see I've done that for cell 1, cell 2, cell 3, cell 4. They're all the same. Cell 5 is the one that's a little bit special, and that's because that is the My Account page. So let's walk through what this looks like and kind of explain why it functions this way. It does look a little bit nerve-wracking, but don't worry, we're going to walk through it very, very briefly. So this is set up to basically tell users if they're going to the My Account page, hey, you don't have an account already. Or you do have an account, let's take you there, set all the variables on the page up for you. So when you click on the cell for the My Account page, it will take you straight here. What's happening in the background is all of this. So on the component tab, what we want to do is grab the installed component get current user Firebase auth. So it's right here. You can drag it over and connect the nodes. I'll move a little bit quicker here because at this point we're starting to use some of the similar functionality from the previous videos. So we have get current user. Connected to the bottom two nodes, we have a toast message. This is the output of another node. So to double check, you can always check on formulas. But in this case, we would basically just choose output of another node, get current user, and then you can choose the error message. That'll display it to the user. Now in the top node, we're going to connect set app variable, which you can grab from the core logic and drag it over. So you're going to need, if you haven't already created, an app variable called temp profile URL. And then what this is going to be set to is the user ID. So when you select here, it's going to be the output of another node. So we'll choose output of another node, get current user, scroll down to user ID. Then we're going to connect the HTTP or the get record. So it's in the core logic over here on the left-hand side, get record. And we're going to get the previously created profile details record. So you'll just choose that from the dropdown. And the ID is going to be the temp profile URL. So it's just going to be your app variables. So you'll click here, choose your data and variables, app variable, and you'll find temp profile URL. Now we'll cover the positive logic first. So the logic connected to the true side. So connected to this is just a bunch of set app variables. That's really all that there is to it. So we'll do this and make it as quick as possible. So all of these are the same. You'll see each one is set app variable. And then I'll show you what each of them are. So the first one, and this is all you need to know, these are the app variables that you need to make. So if it helps to pause the video, you can just click this slider here and make the following app variables: about me, profile picture, app description, username, app plan, app name, extra 1, extra 2, extra 3, my email, and set project name and organization ID. Now most of these are not actually going to be needed. They're from another app, so you'll be able to see which ones you can add or avoid if you want to. So at this point, what we are going to do is we're going to work through actually basically getting these app variables set. It's a relatively simple and straightforward process. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to set the app variable about me, and it's going to be the output of another node, and you're going to set it to the about me option. So just to break this down, if you don't need all of these app variables, you can choose. It's up to you. This is based on what user details you want the user to see. So we're pulling from Firebase their specific profile details option. If you remember from the last video, it was chat 1, chat 2, chat 3, username, email, etc. So what you're doing is you're saying set the app variable for about me to the output of another node, get record, and these are all of the options to choose from. And you can just choose the string value for the associated record. So in this case, about me would be right here, chat would be right here, username is right here. So you follow the process for all of the records that you're keeping or storing for the user. That way they're there and available on page load. So I did that all the way down. In this case, you don't need to do it. For example, you don't need to set the app variable project name to anything else because you set your app variable from the beginning. So this one you can delete completely, and you would just make sure to set whatever app variable you need to as you need to. So at the end of this is going to be just the open page my account. Very, very simple process. So all you're really doing is saying, okay, open my account, and then I'm done. So in this case, it's just taking you to the page. So once you've done all of that, then we need to do what I'll call the negative side, or the I don't have an account portion. So at the other side of the get record, it's saying if I can't get a record, it's going to give them a dialog. And the dialog you can see over here on the left-hand side, it is the confirm option. And it basically pops up saying confirm, and then there's a choice to choose yes or no. Yes is the top, no is the bottom. You can see that over here. So I've dropped in the confirm dialog, and you'll see when you go to properties, this is the text that I have that is displayed. I'll paste it in up here. It says profile not set up, create now. This will delete details you have previously entered. And then if they choose yes, we'll show what it's going to do. And if they choose no, we'll also show what it's going to do. So if they choose no, it's going to show a toast message saying, please try again later, which you know to drag over and type in the text here. And then it will also go to open my account page. Then if they confirm yes, it's going to do an HTTP request, which if you remember, we've already installed. And I'll put what it's going to request in the description of this video, but we're submitting to this URL, and in this case we have to set this up for the specific database. So bear in mind that your project name here is going to be different from mine, and then it's going to post the following data. So I'll paste this in the description of the video as well, but the idea here is you're changing these app variables to match up with whatever variables that you have in your app. So in the case of the social sharing app, you're going to have chat 1, chat 2, chat 3, and then you're going to have all of the others basically that we set up in a previous video to upload to your account. So I'll put the corrected option here, but you'll see we're saying this is the About Me section in Firebase, put this variable. This is in Firebase, put this variable. So check the description. I will put the request URL and the request body. Once this is done, all three nodes are connected to open my account. It may seem odd that we're always opening the account no matter what happens, but the idea here is we're giving them the choice to make updates or changes or not before opening that page. So again, the idea here is we're just setting up the data to load before the page actually opens. So if you're going to have the same My Account setup that I already have, then just make sure that you're setting that logic up for anywhere in the app that accesses the My Account page. And then again, you can make any other adjustments or changes as needed to help the spacing better accommodate the actual setup that I have here. But I hope this was helpful. Again, we have basically made this bar down here. You can change the colors and formatting as needed. If you have any questions or if you want to move it around, you can just grab it from the tree down here and then move it throughout the app and place it wherever you need to. So I hope that was helpful. I will see you all in the next video, and if you have any questions, drop them in the comment box below.